There is a quiet sugar leak that can happen while you sleep, and most people over 60 have no idea it is happening. You go to bed thinking the day is over. You did not eat dessert. You did not raid the fridge. You did not do anything obviously wrong. And yet, you wake up with a blood sugar number that makes no sense. It is higher than it was the night before, higher than you expected, sometimes high enough to make you feel heavy, thirsty, tired, and strangely foggy before the day has even started. Most people blame dinner. Some blame age. A lot of people blame themselves. But the real reason is usually much more specific. And once you see it, the whole pattern starts to make sense. Before we start, please subscribe, like this video, and join our channel for clear, practical health advice that truly helps. What makes this so frustrating is that high morning blood sugar feels unfair. You were asleep, you were not eating, you were not snacking, you were not doing anything except lying still in a dark room, trying to rest. So how can sugar go up when food is not coming in? That question bothers a lot of people after 60 because the body becomes less forgiving with time. You can eat the same dinner you ate 10 years ago and wake up fine. Then one day, seemingly out of nowhere, your mornings start changing. The number is higher, your energy is lower, and it begins to feel like your body is making decisions without asking your permission. To understand what is going on, you have to stop thinking of blood sugar as something that only reacts to food. Food matters, obviously. But your liver matters too. Your hormones matter. Your muscles matter. Your sleep matters. Even the time of night matters, more than most people realize. While you are asleep, your body is not shut down. It is running a night shift. It is balancing fuel, repairing tissues, adjusting hormones, keeping your brain supplied, and preparing you to wake up. If that night shift becomes sloppy, or if your cells stop responding well to insulin, your blood sugar can begin rising hours before breakfast without a single bite of food entering your mouth. There is a name for one of the most common reasons this happens. It is the early morning rise in blood sugar that shows up because your body starts getting ready for the day before you are even awake. In those pre-dawn hours, hormones begin to nudge your liver. They tell it to release glucose so you have fuel available for waking, moving, thinking, standing up, and starting the day. In a younger, more insulin-sensitive body, that extra glucose gets handled smoothly. A small insulin response keeps things tidy. But after 60, when insulin resistance is more common, that little hormonal nudge can turn into a much bigger sugar rise than it should, and you end up staring at a morning number that feels like a betrayal. This is one reason so many adults say, "I barely eat and my sugar is still high." They are not imagining it. They are not failing some hidden character test. Their body is simply producing glucose at the wrong time or handling it poorly, and the mismatch shows up first thing in the morning. Add in lighter sleep, less muscle mass, more belly fat, less daily movement, and sometimes medications that complicate the picture, and the whole system gets noisier. What used to be a gentle overnight adjustment turns into a hard spike. Then the morning begins with thirst, fatigue, and cravings, and the rest of the day has to start from a deficit. There is another layer to this after 60, and it does not get discussed enough. As we age, muscle tissue naturally tends to shrink if we do not actively use it. That matters because muscle is one of the largest places glucose can be stored and burned. Less muscle means less room for sugar to go. So when your liver releases extra glucose overnight, there is less metabolic flexibility to absorb that rise. Your body has a smaller fuel tank and a slower engine at the same time. That is why two people can eat a similar dinner, go to sleep at the same hour, and wake up with very different numbers. One body clears glucose quietly. The other body keeps it circulating, and you feel the difference before your feet hit the floor. Think of it like this. Your liver is a warehouse. At night, it keeps the loading dock open just enough to send out fuel when needed. Hormones act like the supervisor telling the workers when to load the truck. Insulin is the traffic controller making sure the shipment goes where it belongs. But if the controller is weak, delayed, or ignored, the trucks keep rolling and the streets fill up. That traffic jam is glucose in your bloodstream. When you are younger, the system clears quickly. When you are older and more insulin resistant, the backup lasts longer. And when that happens night after night, Your mornings start feeling mysteriously worse, even when your evenings seem fine. A woman I will call Diane captures this perfectly. She is 68, careful with food, takes her health seriously, and genuinely tries. She eats chicken, vegetables, maybe a small serving of rice, nothing wild. She goes to bed proud of herself. But the next morning, her number is up again. Then she starts doubting everything. Was it the rice? Was it the carrots? Was it the one cracker she had with soup? She gets stricter and stricter. And still the morning reading does not cooperate. What she does not realize is that the problem is not always the dinner itself. Sometimes it is the overnight liver output, the loss of insulin sensitivity, and the simple fact that her metabolism now handles nighttime differently than it did 15 years ago. A lot of adults over 60 live inside this pattern for years without anyone explaining it clearly. They get told to watch carbs, which is not wrong, but it is not enough. They hear exercise more, which helps, but it is still too vague. What they need is a lever, one small practical habit that fits into real life and nudges the body in the right direction while they sleep, instead of against them. And this is where the bedtime drink comes in. Not as a miracle, not as a cure, not as a replacement for medication or medical care, but as one targeted tool that may help lower the overnight sugar rise when it is used correctly, by the right person, in the right context. The drink is diluted apple cider vinegar in water, not a shot, not straight from the bottle, not some sugary wellness tonic with honey poured into it. Just plain apple cider vinegar, properly diluted, usually in a glass of water before bed. If your clinician says it is appropriate for you. I know vinegar sounds too simple to matter. It sounds like one of those pantry myths that gets passed around online and inflated into magic. But there is a reason this one keeps coming up in blood sugar conversations. The active part of vinegar, acetic acid, appears to affect how the body handles glucose. And that effect becomes especially interesting when morning blood sugar is the problem. Now, this is where people usually make one of two mistakes. They either dismiss vinegar completely because it sounds too ordinary, or they start treating it like a cure-all and expect a dramatic drop overnight. Both reactions miss the point. The real value here is more modest and more believable. A small improvement in fasting blood sugar, repeated over time, can matter a lot. If your mornings are consistently too high, even a 5% improvement is not trivial. It can mean less strain on your pancreas, a calmer start to the day, fewer cravings by mid-morning, and better momentum overall. That is how metabolic health usually changes, not in fireworks, but in repeated small wins that stop the daily damage from stacking up. So how could something sour in a glass of water possibly affect blood sugar by morning? Part of the answer seems to be digestion. Vinegar may slow how quickly food leaves the stomach and how quickly some carbohydrates are broken down and absorbed. That matters most when dinner was a little heavy, or late, or higher in starch than your body can comfortably handle. If glucose enters your bloodstream more slowly, the post-dinner surge is smaller. A smaller surge means less insulin chaos, and often less spillover into the night. Your body has fewer fires to put out while you sleep. That alone can make the morning calmer, especially in people whose late meals tend to echo into the next day. But the more interesting piece may be what happens beyond the stomach. Some researchers believe acetic acid may influence the way the liver handles glucose overnight. Remember that warehouse. The liver can make and release glucose even when you are not eating. That is normal. The problem is when it becomes over-enthusiastic, especially in insulin resistance. Vinegar appears to help blunt that response in some people, which may be why a bedtime dose can affect waking glucose, even though there is no meal being digested at that exact moment. In other words, it may not just be about slowing dinner down. It may also be about making the liver less eager to dump sugar into the bloodstream before dawn, when that system tends to overshoot. That is why the bedtime research on vinegar caught attention. In a small controlled trial, adults with type 2 diabetes who took vinegar before bed woke up with lower fasting glucose than when they took a comparison snack without it. The improvement was not massive, but it was real, And in the people with higher starting fasting sugars, the drop was even more noticeable, around the range of several percentage points by morning. That is the kind of result that matters because it lines up with how real bodies behave. Not dramatic enough to sound fake, not useless enough to ignore. Just enough to suggest that for some people, the chemistry of the night can be nudged in a better direction. And when you step back and look at broader research, the picture stays similar. Vinegar is not a miracle, but it does show a consistent tendency to improve post-meal glucose, and in some studies, fasting blood sugar as well. The evidence is not perfect. Many studies are small, the doses vary, the kinds of vinegar vary, the participants vary. Still, the direction of the effect is hard to dismiss. It keeps pointing the same way. Modest benefit, best used as an add-on. Most helpful when blood sugar is already drifting high and the person is also working on the bigger foundations like meals, movement, sleep, and medication timing. Rather than hoping vinegar alone will undo years of metabolic strain. That last sentence matters more than people think. The people who get disappointed by simple tools are often the ones secretly asking them to do impossible jobs. If dinner is huge, bedtime is late, sleep is broken, movement is low, medications are off, and stress is high, a bedtime drink is not going to clean all of that up by itself. And it should not be expected to. But if your routine is reasonably solid and the remaining problem is stubborn morning sugar, then a small targeted intervention can suddenly become useful. This is exactly how endocrinology often works in real life. Not giant dramatic hacks, but tiny pressure changes at the right place in the system. So what does the practical version look like? First, never take it straight. Straight vinegar is rough on the teeth, rough on the throat, and for some people, rough on the stomach too. The safer everyday version is to dilute it well, usually in a full glass of water. Some people start with 1 teaspoon, some use 2 teaspoons, some use 1 tablespoon. In research, larger amounts have been used, but that does not mean everybody should jump to the highest dose on night 1. The point is not bravery. The point is tolerance and consistency. If something burns, causes nausea, or makes reflux worse, that is not a helpful health habit. That is your body objecting. A reasonable routine, if your doctor says it is fine, is to take diluted apple cider vinegar about 20 to 30 minutes before bed, not with a sugary bedtime snack, not mixed into juice, not turned into a sweet detox drink. Just diluted in water, plain and simple. Some people prefer warm water because it feels easier on the stomach. Others use cool water. That part does not matter much. What matters more is that you are not pairing it with extra sugar, and you are not using it as permission to eat carelessly late at night. The drink is supposed to reduce strain, not cancel out habits that keep creating the strain in the first place. And here is something important. The title says, "Drink this before bed." But the truth is, the drink works best when the rest of the evening does not sabotage it. If you have vinegar at 10 o'clock and then eat cookies at 10:20, you have changed the experiment completely. And not in a good way. If you finish a huge bowl of pasta at 9:30 and go to bed at 10, you are also asking too much of that one small tool. The best setup is boring, honestly. Dinner at a decent time, no heavy carb snack right before sleep, then the diluted vinegar, then bed. That kind of rhythm makes the drink part of a system, and systems are what change blood sugar, not isolated tricks. This is also why some people swear vinegar did nothing for them. When you look closely, their actual bedtime routine is fighting against the effect. A late dinner, alcohol, dessert, 3 hours of television, then bed. That pattern is like stepping on the gas and the brake at the same time, and then blaming the brake for not working well enough. The goal is to make your overnight metabolism calmer. Every late-night surge of food, stress, or poor sleep pushes the other way. Vinegar may still help a little, but you will not see the real difference it can make if the rest of the night is chaotic. Sometimes the drink is not failing. Sometimes, it is simply being outvoted by the rest of the evening. Now let's talk about who is most likely to notice a benefit. If your morning glucose is the number that keeps bothering you, even when daytime readings are not terrible, you may be a good candidate to ask your doctor about this. If you tend to wake up high after a reasonably normal dinner, and especially if you are over 60 with known insulin resistance, prediabetes, or type 2 diabetes, this is the exact situation where the idea makes sense. It is aimed at the overnight rise, not the lunchtime spike, not the holiday meal, not the birthday cake. This is a night tool for a night problem. And matching the tool to the problem is what makes it worth considering. On the other hand, if your sugar is high all day, not just in the morning, vinegar is probably too small a lever to fix the real issue. If your medication dose is wrong, or your meals are consistently overloading your system, or your sleep is broken by untreated sleep apnea, then the bigger problems need the bigger attention. I want to be very clear about that because this is where people get into trouble. They reach for the easy habit because it feels manageable, and then they quietly avoid the harder conversations that actually matter more. Vinegar can support a plan. It cannot replace a plan. And after 60, being honest about that can save you months or years of wasted effort. There are also people who should be cautious, and this part matters just as much as the potential benefit. If you have frequent reflux, gastritis, stomach irritation, or a condition that slows stomach emptying, vinegar may aggravate things instead of helping. If you have chronic kidney problems, or low potassium, or you take medications that affect potassium balance, this becomes an even more important conversation with your healthcare team. And if you use insulin or medications that can push blood sugar down, you do not want to casually add something that might change your numbers without knowing how your body responds. Even natural tools are still tools, and tools can be helpful or harmful depending on who is using them and how. There is another practical issue nobody mentions enough: teeth. Vinegar is acidic. Repeated direct acid exposure is not kind to enamel. That does not mean you can never use it. It means use it intelligently. Dilute it. Do not sip it slowly for an hour. Do not swish it around your mouth like it is mouthwash. Some people even prefer using a straw, then rinsing with plain water afterward. Those sound like small details, but small details are the difference between a habit that quietly supports health and a habit that creates a different problem 6 months later. And that is exactly the kind of trade nobody wants. People also ask whether the brand matters, whether the mother matters, whether it has to be organic, raw, cloudy, filtered, unfiltered, this or that. Here is the simple answer. The main thing researchers care about is the acetic acid. That is the active piece most tied to the blood sugar effect, not the marketing language on the bottle. Some people prefer unfiltered versions, and that is fine. But I would not overcomplicate this. The human brain loves turning simple habits into treasure hunts. Then people spend weeks comparing labels and never actually test the routine. The point is not to build a vinegar identity. The point is to see whether a well-diluted bedtime dose safely and consistently improves your morning numbers. And no, more is not better. This is one of those areas where people can hurt themselves with enthusiasm. If 1 tablespoon seems good, they assume 3 must be better. It does not work like that. Too much vinegar can irritate the stomach, worsen nausea, aggravate reflux, and make the whole routine impossible to stick with, which defeats the purpose. A good health habit is one that your body tolerates and your life can support. Dramatic dosing makes for dramatic stories, but steady dosing makes for actual results. The overnight blood sugar system is not impressed by bravado. It responds to consistency. Not theatrics. Now let's connect this to something emotionally real, because blood sugar is never just a number. When morning glucose is high, people often feel like the day starts against them. They wake up tired. They are hungrier earlier. Their patience is shorter. Their thinking is slower. They need more caffeine than they used to, and sometimes that caffeine makes the whole day shakier. By late morning, they are craving something quick and starchy because the body is already trying to recover from an unstable start. So a better morning number is not just about a lab trend. It is about having a steadier brain, a calmer appetite, and a little more trust in your own body, right from the first hour of the day. A man I will call Roger learned that the hard way. He is 71 and always thought his issue was breakfast. He blamed the toast, then the oatmeal, then the fruit, then the coffee. He kept stripping breakfast down and down until it was barely anything. And he still felt lousy by 10 o'clock. When he finally started checking his glucose before breakfast instead of only after, the pattern was obvious. He was waking up high. Breakfast was not creating the problem. It was just arriving after the problem had already started. Once he shifted his attention to the evening routine, everything became easier to understand. He did not need to fear every breakfast food. He needed to stop the overnight rise from setting the tone. That is why identifying the pattern matters so much. If your sugar is already elevated before the first sip of coffee, breakfast is not the first domino. Something happened earlier. Maybe it was a late dinner. Maybe it was poor sleep. Maybe it was medication timing. Maybe it was the normal early morning hormone surge hitting an insulin-resistant system harder than it should. A bedtime drink like diluted apple cider vinegar is one way to test that overnight piece. It is not magic. It is feedback. If your mornings improve, you have learned something useful about your metabolism. If they do not, that tells you the driver may be somewhere else and deserves a closer look. There is also a timing advantage here that many people overlook. Night is long. If a habit helps at 10 p.m., the body gets hours to benefit from that calmer chemistry before breakfast ever begins. Compare that with trying to fix everything at 8 a.m. after the number is already high. That is much harder. It is like trying to mop the kitchen after the sink has been overflowing all night, instead of tightening the faucet before bed. The reason bedtime strategies matter is not because bedtime is mystical. It is because prevention is almost always easier than correction. Give the body a quieter runway overnight, and the takeoff in the morning is smoother. But I do not want to give you the impression that the drink is the whole strategy, because it should not be. The best results come when the bedtime drink is paired with one or two other smart moves. One of the strongest is simply finishing dinner earlier when possible. Another is taking a short walk after dinner, even 10 minutes, because muscle contractions help pull glucose out of the bloodstream. A third is keeping nighttime snacks small and low in sugar. When these things line up together, the bedtime drink has a much easier job to do. It is no longer pushing against a tidal wave. It is working with the rest of your routine, which is where small tools start performing much better. Let me paint you a practical evening that actually fits real life. You eat dinner at 6:30 or 7 o'clock. Nothing perfect, just sensible. A protein, some vegetables, a controlled portion of starch. After dinner, you get up and move for 10 minutes around the block, around the house, up the hallway, wherever. Then you let the night settle. No second dinner, no sugar raid. About 20 or 30 minutes before bed, if it is safe for you medically, you have your diluted apple cider vinegar and water. Then you brush your teeth later, go to bed, and let your body do the rest. That is not glamorous. It is not trendy. But it is exactly the kind of routine the endocrine system likes. Because it is predictable and quiet. And predictable matters more after 60 than most people realize. The older body does not love extremes. It does not love huge meals, jagged sleep, long sitting, and then sudden correction attempts. It responds better to rhythm. Same dinner window, same bedtime, same medication schedule, same kind of overnight environment. When rhythm improves, glucose often improves with it. This is one reason people sometimes think a supplement or drink is suddenly working wonders, when what really changed is that they finally attached it to a steadier routine. The body was not waiting for a miracle ingredient. It was waiting for less chaos. And the vinegar just arrived at the same time the chaos started dropping. You may also be wondering whether the vinegar should be taken with food before bed. In the small bedtime trial, it was paired with a little bit of cheese. That detail matters scientifically, but it does not mean everyone should start eating cheese at night. For some people, adding food before bed makes numbers worse, not better. That is why personal response matters. If you already know bedtime snacks push your morning glucose up, do not assume copying a study protocol word for word is right for your body. The useful idea is the vinegar effect, not blind imitation. Real-life diabetes management is always a conversation between general evidence and individual response, not one-size-fits-all theater. What should you actually expect if this helps? Not a cinematic transformation. More likely, a quieter morning. Maybe the number is 8 points lower, maybe 12, maybe 15. Maybe some mornings feel the same and then the trend begins to improve over a week or two, once the routine becomes consistent. Some people notice less thirst on waking. Some feel less puffy. Some realize they are not hunting for toast or cereal an hour after breakfast anymore. Again, none of that sounds flashy, but these are exactly the changes that matter because they make the next decision easier. A stable morning creates a better afternoon. One calm start leads to another. That is how metabolic health gets rebuilt, brick by brick. And if you try it and nothing changes, that is useful too. Health habits are not moral tests. They are experiments. If your morning blood sugar does not budge after a fair trial, you have learned that vinegar is not the main lever for you. Maybe sleep is. Maybe your medication timing is. Maybe your dinner composition is. Maybe you are dealing with untreated sleep apnea, which can absolutely worsen glucose control by disrupting hormones and stress chemistry all night long. The goal is not to fall in love with the tool. The goal is to understand your pattern. Once you stop personalizing the result, it becomes much easier to make smart adjustments instead of emotional ones. This is also the moment to say something I think people need to hear more often. If your morning number is high, that does not automatically mean you were bad the night before. The language people use around blood sugar is often punishing. Good number, good food, bad food, good patient, bad patient. That mindset helps nobody, especially after 60 when the body is doing more behind the scenes. Metabolism is biology, not virtue. You are not being graded on obedience. You are observing a system. Some nights it behaves, some nights it does not. Your job is not to feel ashamed. Your job is to notice patterns, reduce friction, and use the tools that actually move the numbers in the right direction. One reason I like the bedtime vinegar idea, when it is medically appropriate, is that it gives people something concrete to test without turning life upside down. You do not need a gym membership. You do not need a complicated app. You do not need to buy powders with glowing labels. You do not need to become a full-time biohacker, or memorize every glycemic index chart on the internet. You just need a simple routine and a way to observe your mornings. That simplicity matters because overwhelm is one of the biggest reasons people give up. Complex health plans look impressive on paper, but the body only benefits from what you actually do, not what you meant to do. Now, if you want to test this intelligently, do not just try it once and declare victory or failure. Give it a fair window. Keep the rest of your evening reasonably consistent for several nights. Check your blood sugar at bedtime and again in the morning if that is part of your care plan. Watch the trend, not just one number. One strange reading can happen to anyone. The body is not a calculator. Stress, poor sleep, a late phone call, pain, illness, even a restless night can shift glucose. You are looking for direction, not perfection. If the average morning begins to drift down while everything else stays fairly similar, that is the signal you care about. If you use a continuous glucose monitor, this gets even more interesting because you can actually watch the night. You can see whether you are going to bed high, rising at 3 a.m., or waking high after being normal earlier. That kind of pattern data is gold because it tells you which problem you are really solving. If you do not use a CGM, that is okay. Even a few old-fashioned fingerstick comparisons can still teach you a lot. The point is to stop guessing. Most people spend years guessing why their mornings are off. A tiny amount of data turns frustration into a solvable puzzle, and that changes everything. There is one more caution I want to give, especially for adults taking blood sugar medications. If your numbers do improve, that is good news, but it also means you should keep your healthcare team in the loop. Any change that affects fasting glucose consistently can eventually affect how your regimen fits you. The danger is not usually from one glass of diluted vinegar itself, but from quietly changing your physiology while no one is paying attention. If you are on insulin, sulfonylureas, or multiple glucose-lowering drugs, you want guidance. The safest wins are the ones that are both effective and supervised. You are trying to lower risk, not create a new hidden one. And please do not make the common mistake of thinking sour means healthy regardless of context. A lot of commercial drinks that use vinegar as a theme are loaded with juice, sweeteners, concentrates, and wellness language. They can taste friendlier, but metabolically, they may be doing the opposite of what you want, especially before bed. The cleaner the routine, the easier it is to understand. Water and diluted vinegar. That is it. If you need cinnamon or lemon for taste and your numbers stay fine, okay. But the more extras you pile on, the more you are changing the experiment. When it comes to blood sugar, clarity is powerful. Simplicity lets you see cause and effect, instead of drowning it in decoration. Let's also talk about sleep itself, because this is where people get surprised. Poor sleep raises stress hormones. Stress hormones make the liver more generous with glucose. So sometimes the best bedtime drink is only part of the story because what really needs fixing is the sleep environment. Too much light, too much alcohol, too much screen time, too much pain, too many bathroom trips, too much snoring. All of those can make overnight glucose worse. Vinegar might still help a little at the edge, but if sleep is fractured every night, you are trying to steady your sugar on a shaking floor. Protecting sleep is not separate from blood sugar care. It is blood sugar care, especially after 60. That is also why this title matters more than it seems. Before bed is not just a timestamp, it is a metabolic window. What you do in that window has outsized effects because it can amplify or calm the entire night. If bedtime becomes a dumping ground for snacks, screens, stress, and random habits, mornings will reflect that. If bedtime becomes simple, quiet, and intentional, the body often rewards you. This is true whether vinegar helps you or not. The bigger lesson is that the night is active biology. It is not empty time between dinner and breakfast. It is a long hormonal conversation, and your routine is part of that conversation, whether you mean it to be or not. So let's bring this all the way down to the practical bottom line. If you are over 60 and your morning blood sugar keeps coming in high, even when you think dinner was reasonable, the problem may be happening overnight. Your liver may be releasing too much glucose. Your cells may not be responding well to insulin. Your muscle mass may not be giving you enough buffering. Your sleep may be nudging stress hormones upward before dawn. In that setting, a small glass of diluted apple cider vinegar before bed may help some people lower fasting glucose by morning. Not all people. Not dramatically, not magically, but enough to be worth discussing and, if appropriate, trying carefully as part of a broader routine. The version worth remembering is simple. Diluted, not straight. Small, not heroic. Consistent, not random. Paired with a sensible evening, not used to excuse a chaotic one. Avoided if it aggravates reflux, stomach issues, kidney concerns, low potassium, or medication-related risks. Observed with actual glucose readings, not judged by vibes alone. That is how adults after 60 should approach this kind of tool. Calmly, intelligently, without hype. The body responds best when you stop fighting it emotionally and start working with it mechanically. Find the pressure point, adjust it gently, watch what happens. That is the whole game, and it is often enough to change more than you think. And if there is one thing I want you to remember after this video, it is this. A high morning blood sugar is not random. It is a message. Your body is showing you how it handles the night. Do not ignore that message, and do not turn it into shame. Turn it into information. If a simple bedtime drink can quiet the overnight rise, great. If it cannot, that is information too, and it points you toward the next thing to fix. But either way, you are no longer guessing. You are no longer blaming age for everything. You are finally reading the signal correctly. And once you understand the signal, you have a real chance to change the pattern. If this video helped you see your mornings differently, hit like and subscribe. And if you want, tell me in the comments what your fasting number tends to be when you wake up, because that one detail says a lot more about the night than most people realize. The goal is not perfect blood sugar by force. The goal is a body that works with you, not against you while you sleep. And sometimes the first step toward that is as simple as what you put in a glass before bed.